Good morning. Welcome to the Greenville Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Amber Gallia, and I serve this congregation as the chair of the RE Council. Whether you've been with us on Sundays for a long time or are visiting us for the first time today, we welcome you to our service. This congregation is a theologically diverse religious community with participation open to all who agree to live into our principles, mission, and values. We are a welcoming congregation to people of all sexual orientations and gender identities, races, ethnicities, and abilities. And we unconditionally welcome you as your full, authentic self to our community of caring and commitment to grow as spiritual and moral beings. Our congregational mission is to strengthen our connections to one another and our planet by enlivening minds and spirits, building community through liberating love, and advocating fiercely for justice. It is a custom in this congregation to acknowledge visitors and newcomers. So if it's your first time here, would you mind raising your hand so we can acknowledge you? Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us this morning. And all are invited to join us for coffee after the service. New and newer folks are invited to grab a green mug located just inside the door of the fellowship hall so we can easily spot you and speak to you to welcome you during our coffee hour. You're also welcome to fill out one of the green cards in the back of the pews so we can keep in touch with you and simply drop that card in the offering basket or the box at the welcome table in the foyer. Please know that whatever your religious history, whatever your personal theology, all people of goodwill are welcome here. Your presence makes us better. Your presence makes us whole. Now I'd like to welcome Meredy with an announcement about the auction.
Goof wants you and you. The 2024 auction is rapidly approaching, and we need your donations to make it a successful fundraiser. Please donate your services, your dinners, hikes, events, and priceless items by October 1st so that we can get them into the catalog before the auction begins on October 20th. You can either enter your donation online or by good old paper form. Auction information about how to donate is available on the Goof website, the e-news, and in your email inbox from time to time. Come see me, Mary D. Harper, and other auction committee members after the service outside the fellowship hall if you have any questions. Remember, the deadline is October 1st. That's only a month from today.
It is a sad thing to forget the past, because the past is a reminder and a remembrance of who we were and how we got to where we are now. Because there was a star, because there was a sermon on a mountainside, because there was a garden and a resurrection, because there were brave women and men who dared to think differently, because they were Puritans and Congregationalists. We are here today in this place we call sacred. May we not forget. Blessed be.
Good morning, Goof. I'm the Reverend Chris Hockman, so privileged and happy to serve this congregation. And I was just thinking a moment ago, why just have one pianist when you can have three? Our call to worship this morning is from the late UU minister, Jacob Trapp, and it's called To Worship. It also happens to be reading number 441 in the Gray Hymnal, in case you would like to follow along. To worship is to stand in awe under a heaven of stars, before a flower, a leaf in sunlight, or a grain of sand. To worship is to be silent, receptive, before a tree astir with the wind, or the passing shadow of a cloud. To worship is to work with dedication and with skill. It is to pause from work and listen to a strain of music. To worship is to sing with the singing beauty of the earth. It is to listen through a storm to the still, small voice within. Worship is a loneliness seeking communion. It is a thirsty land crying out for rain. Worship is a kindred fire within our hearts. It moves through deeds of kindness and through acts of love. Worship is the mystery within us, reaching out to the mystery beyond. It is an articulate silence, yearning to speak. It is the window of the moment, open to the sky of the eternal. Come, let us sing together. This is an easy and fun one, so I expect you to be really loud and confident. Please rise, embody your spirit for enter, rejoice, and come in. Today we have a special guest star to do our story. Ms. Jackie will be here telling it on the stage here. So I'd like to invite any children, youth, or anyone young at heart who would like a closer view to come up and sit on the floor in front of this chair here, or come up into the front pews. All right?
Can you hear me? We're closer? Okay. Okay, there, now you can hear me. I'm sure this is really a neat story. Hi, everybody. Okay, this story is called One Lost Sheep. It's a story from the Bible, and Jesus told this story about a caring shepherd who had 100 sheep. Can you imagine 100 sheep? It's a lot of sheep, isn't it? One day, one of his 100 sheep decided to go off on its own, and off it trotted. And it got lost, and it couldn't find its way back to the other 99 sheep. and it got scared. It was scared that it might be eaten by a lion or gobbled up by a bear. Then the sheep saw its best friend, the loving shepherd. The shepherd had left the other 99 sheep and came to look for the lost sheep. The shepherd knew how really tired and weak and hungry and scared that little sheep must be. He was so relieved and happy to find the little sheep. He just lifted it gently on his shoulders and carried it back to the safety of the sheepfold. Jesus ended this story by saying, God does not want any of God's little children to be lost. And that's for all of us, all over the world. We all need to keep children safe, don't we? Not let them wander too far away from the family home, okay? Thank you so much. There's no RE today, and there won't be any next week, I don't believe. Is that true, Mrs. Chris? Oh, water communion next Sunday. So you can go back and sit with your parents if you would like to. And thank you so much. It's so good to see you. Our congregation is entirely self-governed by democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide for all the financial support for our many programs and ministries among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are now invited to participate in the blessings of giving as the ushers come among you to accept the gifts of this congregation. Thank you. It is our custom in this congregation to share the joys and sorrows that shape our lives. honoring each one with the lighting of a candle. We recognize that life is not always easy and that we all have moments of celebration and struggle. By sharing these experiences with each other, we can support and uplift each other as we navigate the significant events of our lives. We have quite a few this morning. Start with the first one. Betsy and Charlie Smith and daughter Laura expressed their sincere appreciation for all the kind words and support after the loss of their son Brendan. And a special thank you to everyone who contributed and participated in Brendan's memorial service. And I'm sorry, I can't read the last word. Charlie, Betsy, and Laura Smith. And my heart goes out to you, really. Dear fellowship family, this is a joy from Carol Lavash, and a sorrow too. Dear fellowship family, I am overwhelmed with emotion and thanks for your support of my recovery with meals, calls, and cards, and offers of help. It has been a month now since my fall, and recovery is slow, but your support has helped a great deal. I am scheduled for surgery September the 6th. We send our love onto them. And we will light one final candle representing all the joys and sorrows present in our hearts that remain unspoken. We will now observe a brief moment of silence before the meditation words begin.
Our meditative words today are from the UU minister, the Reverend Kevin Tarsa. And this writing is a prayer, and it is actually a version of Psalm 23, recast in the language of love. My friend Pastor Dana, who's a UCC minister back in Texas, has said, you can take most of the New Testament and take out God and put the word love in there, and it works just fine. This is the same idea. May I remember in this tender moment that love is my guide, always, shepherding me toward ways of openness and compassion. I have what I need, really, with love at my side, above me, below me, in front of me, behind me, and inside every cell of me, love infused everywhere. Just when the weight of the world I inhabit threatens to drop me in place and press my hope down into the ground beneath me, love invites me to rest for a gentle while and leads the center of my soul to the quiet, still, restoring waters nearby that somehow I had not noticed. And so love, quietly, sets me once again on its tender and demanding path. Even when the walls close around me and the cries of death echo through untold corners, gripping my heart with fear and sadness, I know that all will be well, that I will be well. When love whispers near to me, glints at the corner of my eye, rests with gentle and persistent invitation upon my shoulders. Yes, love blesses me, even as the sources and symbols of my pain look on. Love blesses me from its infinite well, and I turn and notice that goodness and kindness and grace follow me everywhere, everywhere I go. I live in a house of love, love that will not let me go. I live in a house of love and always will. Amen. So today I'll be talking about Unitarian Universalism's rather interesting and somewhat challenging relationship with Christianity. Now, Christianity is the root of both our Unitarian and Universalist faith histories. And although our theologies have expanded to include ones that are not Christocentric, the Christian religion is still very much in our UU DNA. It is present in our values and also in our worship style. If an alien came down and looked at us, they'd say, "Oh, these are a bunch of Christians in church, right?" And there have always been Christian UUs in our congregations and within the ranks of our professional ministry. And quite frankly, there will always be. And to put it bluntly, if it were not for Jesus, we would not be here today. Think about that and see if you can find a way that might not be true, really. I know I did. And I find it to be very true, right? If not for Jesus and the message of Jesus, we would not be here, at least not be here for the same purpose. This is what the UU minister Kathleen Rollens has to say about our Christian origins, which themselves originated with what? Judaism, right? She says these two great religions, Christianity and Judaism, are two interwoven strands that compose the fabric of our faith. Both Unitarianism and Universalism were Protestant traditions that understood themselves to be following the teachings of Jesus in a form unadulterated by centuries of Christian church tradition. So that means keep the teachings of Jesus, question some of the other stuff. Also, Jesus was a Jew. People forget that. Jesus was a Jew, and the religion he taught arose out of Jewish stories, values, and teachings. Actually, before his followers developed it into a religion really about him. We honor the special place that both traditions hold in our history and in the current practice of many of our members. The teachings of Jesus invite Unitarian Universalists into the insights available from a deeper relationship with liberal Christianity, allowing the accumulations of dogma that often surround the teachings of Jesus to dissolve. We see with fresh eyes the essence of his message. We can resonate with the second half of his great commandment, cited from the Torah: "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Through the spirit of the message of Jesus, we can claim him as teacher, prophet, and guide, and freely examine and call upon Christianity as one of the deep wells from which we draw. Now that's the end quote. So many, if not all, of our most deeply held UU values can be tied to the values practiced by Jesus. And let's put that to the test for a minute. I'm going to go through our petal diagram. Let's start with love in the center. Does that sound like Jesus? Yeah, right. Check. What about justice? Oh yeah, right? He was like the original social justice warrior. Equality and pluralism. Well, Jesus ran to the margins of society and dined, which was a big no-no, with and ministered to the people who are the most outcast, most despised, most shunned in society. That's where he went first. No one was outside of his circle of inclusion. What about the value of transformation? Well, yeah, Jesus wanted people to do better and be better, right? He was pretty good at calling them out about those things. What about interdependence? I don't know if that word existed in Aramaic back then, but I think it's fair to say that Jesus saw mutually interdependent community as a way of life. Like, we are all in this together. It is our job to love and support one another. And then finally, generosity. Well, I don't need to explain to you how Jesus promoted generosity, right? That's an easy one. Don't have to unpack it. You get it. And I've always hoped, not really hoped, I've always thought, this would be a kind of a scary hope if it came true, but I've always hoped that if Jesus dropped by Goof one Sunday morning, he would find little to argue with. And he might even say, "Hey, that's the stuff I was talking about. Now you just need to get out and act on it," right? In Unitarian Universalism, through our covenants and values, we emphasize the all-encompassing love, quite similar to the love practiced by Jesus, and we emphasize how we treat one another. We don't have a lot of use for doctrine and dogma, which, for your information, were created long after the death of Jesus himself. Now, I know many of us, including myself, came to UUism from a Christian past. We often bring to our new UU religious home baggage from past Christian lives. And this baggage is very real and it's very legitimate. It's often full of hurt and anger and resentment, and sometimes even trauma related to religious abuse. And at the very least, many of us bring a sense of frustration, having been told to profess things that we could not, in good conscience, actually believe. So pain from prior religious experience is real and must be respected, but it also might be worked through because that unresolved pain is not good for you and it's really not good for anyone else. Yet some of us here, we never had any issues at all with our prior Christian experience. And we're here because we just enjoy the theological diversity of UUism while still, quite rightfully, holding Christian beliefs and practices. And some of us come from no religious background at all, and those folks are wondering, what is all this fuss about? Because of the hurt and frustration many UUs bring from their Christian experience, it's often the last thing they want to hear about in their UU congregation, because that's what they were trying to avoid by coming here in the first place. And that's understandable, and I get that. But yet, sometimes we go a little anti-Christian, don't we? But why can't we possibly treat Christianity in the same respectful way we treat other religious traditions? Why can't we approach Christianity with the same curiosity and openness we would approach Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, or even Islam? I've joked for years that I could read from the Quran in service and nobody would bat an eye, but I start reading scripture from the Bible and people would be, really upset. But I suspect this is a fact, because Christianity hits too close to home for many of us. It pushes old buttons, it opens old wounds. It makes us reactive in a way that's not particularly healthy. And that's why it's important to work through the wounds rather than live in this constant reactivity to this pretty much unavoidable majority religion in our country. And this is also very important because Christians always have been and always will be part of Unitarian Universalism for so many different reasons. I can't name them all. They are here because they love Jesus in a way that doesn't fit under any official organized Christian church umbrella. Perhaps they love Jesus, but none of the dogma. Or they have ties with Christianity, but come here with their families or spouses, sometimes regularly, sometimes just occasionally. There are Christians in this room right now. How do I know that? Because there are always Christians in this room right now. There was a time in UUism, a time that might not seem so long ago to many, when it was considered it was okay for UUs to openly express anti-Christian sentiment in their congregations. It was a cool and perfectly accepted part of the culture to make jokes and say snarky things about Christians and Christianity and act like UUs are so cool and so exceptional and it's like so above it all. I know there was hurt and frustration talking in all of that. The same hurt and frustration that still causes people to say those kinds of things today. But folks, it's time to outgrow that behavior. It's not serving anyone well. And I know you as kind and loving people who would never intentionally try to harm anyone. So I believe you're up to that task. Yes, your hurt and frustration is real, but it's not Jesus and his teachings that hurt you. It's the failings of people and the failings of religious institutions created by people that cause that hurt. And in this space or other primarily UU spaces you may occupy, any anti-Christian remarks you make are probably hurting someone. If not the person you're directly talking to, someone within earshot. And they won't tell you when that happens. They will just feel excluded. They may go away and never come back. More so, they will see it as a form of you hypocrisy, which in fact that is. How can we call ourselves theologically diverse, religiously tolerant, loving, compassionate, and generous when we snark about Christians as though that's an acceptable pastime? There's even a story in our fellowship history, its lore, when founder Gil Rowland talked about the original weekly gatherings at his kitchen table that eventually became this. He said we got together so we could cuss the Christians, right? Okay, you think it's funny. I think at first it was probably cute. I could know where he was going. It was cute and folksy. But these days, it's really not funny to a lot of people in the room. No disrespect to Gil, of course. We can't call ourselves radically inclusive or welcoming while denigrating Christians and Christianity, even if we find it kind of funny, right? Because there's always going to be someone for whom it is not funny at all. Probably more than many people. You may remember when I talked about the Charter for Compassion a few weeks ago, how within that charter, compassion calls us to not denigrate anyone, period, not even your enemy. I'm not saying Christians are enemies or they're thought of that way, but not denigrate anyone, right? We all know that Christianity includes an incredibly broad spectrum of beliefs, more than we could probably altogether collectively ever name. So also, when you throw Christians into one simple category with a casual remark, it's pretty careless, right? Because there is no one particular kind of Christian. They are not one great monolith, and talking about them loosely as a huge group is just pretty careless, as it would be with any group of people that has diversity within it. We all know and love at least one person who is Christian, wouldn't you say? Probably a lot more, if you're going to be honest. And let's get real, Goof is part of an interfaith, but admittedly mostly Christian organization of congregations called Goal, right? How can we possibly denigrate the religion of our partners, of people of faith working together towards a more just green bill? How would you feel if they were busy in their congregations casually denigrating us? Many of us, I know, have been told our religion is wrong and that we're headed for a not so pleasant eternity. And we know what it likes, we know how it feels and what it's like to be insulted in that way. So why would we want to go and do that to anybody else, right? And friends, we are too small to fight the good fight alone. We need our Christian and other religious partners in the fight just as much, and perhaps even more than our secular partners in the fight for justice. The fact that we have theological differences is honestly pretty irrelevant to our work because we have so much more in common and so much work to do together. Now, have you all heard about one of the biggest groups fighting Christian nationalism right now? The group is called Christians Against Christian Nationalism, right? Anyone going to argue with that? Anyone? And there are even some fundamentalist and evangelical Christians who are fighting that same fight, right? Christianity and Christians are part of our interdependent web. Our faith tradition is more rooted in Christianity than anything else. Its teachings are in our present-day values. Religious frustration and hurt is real, but that's no excuse for an anti-Christian bias in our congregations that simply perpetuates religious hurt by continuing to inflict it on other people. So maybe it's time to own our own religious attitudes. You don't have to change your attitudes or feelings, but it's about how you speak about them. So maybe it's time to own our attitudes and not generalize and not make assumptions about the beliefs of others when we open our mouths to speak. Like they teach in our covenant circles, I find it always helps if you use what we call I statements and speak from your own experience without generalizing it. This really works when you're having discussions about religious views. I'll give you some examples. How about saying, I'm not comfortable with this particular reading because it reminds me of my religious past in which I was told I didn't belong. I think anyone would be okay with that remark. They wouldn't take offense to it, and it's very honest, right? Like, how about saying that instead of, this is too Christian? How about saying, the Bible is not my favorite wisdom text. I find it very hard to relate to, rather than accusing the minister of being too Christian because she read a passage from the Bible. How about saying something like, my religious history was hard and traumatic, but I realized it was not that way for everyone. Or saying something like, the word God doesn't resonate with me as the ultimate reality, but I know it's important to a lot of people in this community, so I won't complain when it's said. Instead of calling Christians delusional or irrational for having supernatural beliefs, you might say, my particular theology does not include the supernatural, but I support religious freedom and the right of people to have beliefs that are not my own. And isn't that what we're all about, right? Like, again, it's baked into the cake that is UUism. So there are constructive and respectful ways to talk about religious differences, which don't include jokes or snark or denigration, or an assumption that everyone's beliefs here are exactly the same. And it's from constructive and respectful conversations we can all learn. And I think that's why we put ourselves in a theologically diverse environment in the first place, right? So we can learn from other people. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. So all of that aside, this is also a good time to talk about that other elephant in the room, or I could also say the other donkey in the room. Yeah, this is where UUs tend to also get in their own way when it comes to politics. There is more political diversity in this congregation than you may think. It's not a two-party thing. There are people who subscribe to other parties, there are people who are independents, and there are people who are apolitical. They don't like the system, they want nothing to do with it. So they're not going to respond well if someone is cheerleading for anyone on the political spectrum. As the election approaches and emotions become heightened, let's try hard to keep partisan politics out of the fellowship as much as possible. I know that's going to take some restraint for some of y'all, but showing this kind of restraint is good and respectful for this community that we all love. I mean, let's continue to UU the vote, but please take potentially divisive and exclusionary conversations outside of goof and goof communities if you have to have them. And don't make assumptions about people's politics. Again, you could unknowingly be disrespectful and hurtful to others. There's another reason to keep partisan politics out of goof. If we are perceived as a partisan organization, it puts our nonprofit status at risk. Now, it's okay to talk about issues constructively and educate people on issues, again, without preconceptions about what they know or what they believe, that's fine. But talking about candidates for office, political parties, and who to vote for, especially from up here on this chancel or on the live stream or on our social media, that has the potential to get us in trouble. Now, I'm not suggesting any of this to suppress your freedom of speech, because I know y'all love your freedom of speech. The point is to remember that to be inclusive, as we say we are, we must be mindful and respectful of the diversity of opinions and beliefs in the goof community. Again, compassion calls us to not denigrate, even when it is so hard. On a more positive note, for quite a while, I've been hoping for goof to have a UU Christian group. I've always enjoyed UU Christians. I don't consider myself one, but sometimes they tend to be like some of the nicest people in a congregation, I've got to tell you. And they tend to be pretty cool, great Jesus people, doing and believing in what he said to do. Now, I've heard that groups like this might have existed before at Goof, but I haven't gotten a lot of specific information about that. It's pretty minimal. But if you are interested in participating in a UU Christian group, let me know and maybe we can get something together, make something happen. So today I'm going to end with a well-known prayer from St. Francis of Assisi. I want you to not think about it too much, but just see how it makes you feel, okay? Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. All right, we're going to sing again. Again, you have no excuse. This is an easy one. You all know it. And if someone can call out the verses ahead, that would be great, because then people don't even have to look at the slides at all. And I invite anyone, since the choir is here today, and this song is so much fun, if you'd like to come up and sing with the choir up front on the floor. Kids also, if you got some wiggles and want to come up and dance and shimmy and do all those things, this is your opportunity. You don't get that a lot in church. So please rise in body or spirit for this little light of mine.
Will you join with me, please, as we extinguish the chalice, saying the words that are in your program? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fervor of combat. We carry hearts until we are together again.
Our brief closing words today are from the radical abolitionist Unitarian minister Theodore Parker, who happened to be one of those people who witnessed Emerson's Divinity School address. I'm going back a couple sermons ago. He was one of those young ministers there and was definitely influenced by him. But here are his words. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its profession of faith divine living. Dear ones, go in peace, return in love, and let your little light shine. Amen.